Greetings! We are the Rudok's Tavern. You may know us from our Instagram where we post homebrew items and monsters of all kinds. We've decided that since not everyone has the time to read the stories we've written, we'll try and narrate them to our best abilities, so that you may listen to them while on the go or while doing chores if you want. So let us not tarry, and let's just get right into it.
You need to hear more, you say? I understand. Most of you probably think you are not worthy enough for our group. After all, we are an experienced group of cutthroats and pirates, and survival in our crew requires a certain set of skills. But don't worry, you learn them. If you live long enough, and if you don't, well, then it won't really bother you, will it? You either adapt or you die. Our Tavern surrounds himself with only the best. That's something I call his greatest strength. Most goblin leaders are paranoid and usually only surround themselves with bootlickers and cowards who are weaker and less ambitious than them, and tries to keep them in check by fear and force. Our Tavern is different. He doesn't have these delusions of grandeur. He knows that without his crew and companions, he's but a goblin. An exceptional and mighty goblin, no doubt, but still only one goblin. You've already heard of some of his ship officers: Boblin the Spy Master, the Ogre Lieutenant, the Kobold Boom Master called, well, a Boom Master. But the most important one of the lot is and was the Captain's right-hand goblin, called by many names: the Stormcaller, the Tidebringer, the Squidwater, and the magnificent Gobbo. He was a shaman. Well, I don't really know what he was. I've heard that some mercenaries called him something like Hydromancer. I've never seen him conjure a hydra or anything, so I don't know where that came from, but anyway. What I know is that he was really good with water. I don't know how, but winds were always in our favor, and the most dire storms seemed to go around us while he was on board. I would even dare to say he was almost as essential to the crew as our captain was. His absence is probably the reason things aren't going that well these days. No, I believe, like any other goblin, that there is a grain of lie in any truth. And I didn't believe those tales about powerful wizards or whatnot capable of lifting mountains and summoning cranes of fire. But I believed my own eyes, and it was with them that I saw what his goblin was capable of. So let me tell you of the clash of fire and water, as our crew's half-orc poet later named it. It was some time ago when I was just a new recruit on a flotsam, as it was named after the daring commandeer. The day that it happened on seemed simple enough. We were cruising around the southern strait, plundering any trading ships within sight and avoiding patrols. We didn't really have any large haul for quite some time, with a decent halfling merchant brig carrying carrots and turnips being the biggest. We were yearning for something valuable. Some nice, unprotected cog carrying jewelry or gold. To our fortune, or misfortune considering further events, that's exactly what appeared on the horizon. A large cog with a single mast and a single brightly red sail. Joyful commotion started on the flotsam as we started to make our way towards that seemingly merchant ship. As we approached, we realized two things. It was better defended than most other merchant ships, and it looked even more valuable than we initially thought. The wood it was made from looked exotic and dark, and many parts of the ships were gilded. This seems too good to be true, I said to myself at the time, and before I realized it, I noticed the magnificent Gobbo was standing next to me, looking at the merchant ship with a brooding face. I have a bad feeling about this, he says to me and starts caressing the slimy tentacled creature on his staff. He whispered something to the creature and it jumped from the staff into the water. I stared flabbergasted and speechless at the creature as it started making its way towards the vessel. The ship was about 1,000 feet away when the creature returned and jumped back into the shaman's staff. The shaman leaned towards it, and an expression of shock came into his face. He quickly ran towards the captain and started shouting, "Turn it around! Turn it around!" "Oi, it looks like we'll finally have some fat loot again," answered the captain to the joy of most of the crew. "It's a Zhaarhaasian ship, captain," says the shaman. "And what does that mean?" retorted the captain. "Demons, captain, demons and magic." Captain stood there, for he knew not whether to turn the ship. As fate would have it, he didn't have to make that decision, because soon after a small ball of fire appeared in the corner of my eye. I only managed to yell, "Get down!" before the ship's wheel exploded in a burst of fire and force. Some crew members were thrown overboard, some burned, and some became a pile of ash. Captain managed to dodge in time to come out of it unharmed, but as he got back to his feet, he saw a thing he did not expect. The enemy vessel was now approaching us. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever sailed on a ship, so let me tell you one important thing. Fire is bad. Explosive fireballs with killing intent? Worse. When these things started being fired at us, any plans of capturing the enemy ship undamaged were gone. We were fighting for survival now, and we had to use everything at our disposal. We were too close to use the catapults now, but the cannons and ballistae were still at our disposal. But most importantly, we had two things that could even the scales a bit. Speed and a bloody giant naval ram. Our captain told most of the crew to follow him and rush towards the upper rowing deck. He then ordered everyone to either start or keep rowing like they never had before, to sink the bastards to the bottom of the sea for damaging our precious vessel. Flotsam started accelerating towards the Zhaarhaasian ship, which was now showing its broadside and unleashing hells upon us. Whilst cannons are not that ordinary, I expected at least some weapons on board, but from I understand it now, Zhaarhaasian weapons are not of the metal kind. What I saw instead was a line of fiendish flaming creatures, chained and frothing with rage and madness, and being ordered to shoot fire at us by some fancy dressed Yumis. What was, however, maybe more terrifying was the array of beautiful female goblins with wings flying towards our ship. I am not the one to resist temptation, but I've heard stories of creatures that made good sailors lose their minds with lust and jump overboard. These creatures seems like the ones to do those kind of things. But now was not the time to look around. The enemy ship was changing its course so it could dodge our ramming, and I would have none of that happen on my watch. I alone couldn't do anything about it, but I knew of someone who could. The Stormcaller was running around the deck, creating sprays of water and small rains to quell the ongoing fires on the ship, and seemed too busy to notice the flying creatures and turning ship. I ran towards him, dodging one explosion after another, making my way across the maze of blaze happening around until I got to him. "We have to stop them. They're turning their ship around." "Oh, they know," answered the shaman. He then quickly made his way towards the stern, and I followed suit. On his way, he quickly gestured towards a few other crewmen that remained on the deck to follow him. "I need to concentrate on this. You six, protect me from those rotten fiends." He then raised his hands in the air, and I could see his body tense up and exert itself, almost as if he was trying to hold a heavy, invisible thing about himself. I didn't know what a shaman could do here, but I hoped he would be capable of stopping the ship. After some moments of nothing happening, I almost said, I knew not to believe those charades of wizards and magic. But then I realized that the enemy ship was turning no more, and it wasn't for the lack of trying. Oh, it was trying to turn all right, But then I noticed the giant hands of water emerging from the deeps and holding the ship in place. Shiver me timbers and call me a gnome. I was a believer now. But the fun was not yet over. We still had those pigeons to take care of. Our chosen group of 6 goblins were tasked with protecting the shaman, thus shooting these winged fiends down. Unfortunately, only 2 of us had short bows on our hands. Fortunately, the bow was equipped with a few alternatives. There was a bigger ballista used mainly against ships on a raised platform in the middle of a bow, but that one was cumbersome and slow to reload. But in addition to that, there were also 2 smaller scorpions on the railing. The 4 of us without bows decided to turn into pairs, and we managed these overgrown crossbows and started shooting like our lives depended on it. Up to this day I still don't know how we did it, but we managed to send at least a dozen of these sparrows to the depths before they reached our ship. But some still did. The 2 of these winged goblin ladies landed near us and exposed their long claws and fangs to us. Looking at them, I suddenly felt the urge to help them, to kill my companions near me. Now I usually don't refuse a beautiful lass, but this didn't seem like the proper time. I realized what was happening and I knew I had to do something to clear out my mind. I smacked my head upon the railing as hard as I could, and the pain sure made me cool down. I was afraid that my friend near me was having similar problems, so I did him the favor and smacked his head as well. We both drew our scimitars and charged at the lady nearer to us. They seemed taken off by our conviction, as not one of us 6 was beguiled by those wretched harlots. I could see fear in their eyes as we charged at them, and they tried to take to the skies once again. Upon trying to do so, however, the flesh around the chains their bodies were wrapped with started sizzling and burning. The chain started glowing with red and blue light, and seemed to put the demons into massive agony. Now I understand that they probably defied the orders of their Zhaarhaasian masters, and that's why the chains did what they did. But at the time I was glad that I had an easier time cutting their heads off. I was blind with bloodlust and triumph that I didn't see that others on the deck weren't as successful in getting rid of these bloody seductresses. Our men were fighting against each other and against the clawed harpies, and they were losing. There were about 20 more of these demons on board, and they were quickly cutting their way through our crew, and they were quickly getting closer to us. We were lucky that we managed to defeat the 2 of them when I saw how they could dismember an orc in seconds with those razor-like claws of theirs. We were tasked with protecting the Stormcaller, and that's what we were going to do. It was our final hope, but in the midst of being slaughtered, a sudden impact hit us and nearly threw us to the ground. The impact was accompanied by a painful creaking of wood, and by shouts of terror from behind. Our ram had finally found its target, and with that, all of our powers were free to join the battle. And join it they did. They arrived like a tidal storm upon the main deck, crushing the damned chickens against their feet. But we weren't the only ones waiting for a proper fight. The chained and bound hellish creatures and their masters were preparing themselves for the bloodshed too, and they began boarding our ship as well. The proper battle was about to start. I know that when talking loyalty, goblins are usually not the ones to judge, but let me tell you something. We are resourceful and we like to live. We are no less loyal than any of you lot. One cannot really be loyal anymore if he's dead. And if our lives are put in severe danger because of our loyalty, then disloyalty is the only option to secure potential future loyalty. Demons, on the other hand, well, they have it the other way around, which is why it was such a treat to see them turn upon their masters in battle. As we were cutting down one Zhaarhaasian after another, the binds that held their demon slaves obedient began to break, and oh, break they did. They didn't become any less dangerous to us, mind you, but there was something deeply satisfying in seeing our enemies burn from the same fires that plagued us just moments ago. The fight was going on in our favor now, but was still far from being won. We few who were protecting the Stormcaller continued to do so as he started to summon a mighty storm to aid us in our battle and to quench the fires that would harm our ship. It took all his effort to maintain it, however, and that's why we wouldn't allow any foe to get near him. We took care of the few dark-skinned humans that dared to try to get to our shaman, but our job, whilst very important, wasn't that difficult. The slave masters usually kept their pets by their side to defend them, and once those masters died, those pets didn't really care for strategy. This was not a battle for them to win, but to enjoy. There was, however, one slight problem in our safe strategy. The storm that our shaman created caused quite a dribble to appear, and it would seem that demons are not what you would call water creatures. One such demon in particular decided that getting rid of this annoying rain would be preferable to dismembering nearby mortals. And he was unfortunately intelligent enough to understand what Stormcaller was doing. How do demons even look, you might ask? Well, I don't know. Those I have seen differed vastly, and while there surely is something that makes... What I know is what this one looked like. I'm not good at describing otherworldly stuff with these big words like eldritch and primordial and elemental, so I'll put it how I saw it. Imagine a ghost, then put it on fire, then cover that ghost in charcoal armor. The fire from the ghost is mostly inside that armor, but it still manages to find its way through any imperfections, but mostly from the eye slit. The eye slit from which you only see intense burning rage and two red eyes of fire. That's about how I would describe that thing that was cleaving its way through our comrades with a giant two-headed battle axe. Oh, and did I mention that it was about 7 feet tall and had a giant, massive black battle axe? Even though this thing was making its way towards me, I remained unwavering in my loyalty, and without wavering, I cleared off from its way, taking the shaman's head with me for safekeeping reasons. My other companions had the similar idea, and soon the immobile Stormcaller was facing the demon alone, without having to worry about us. Even though we had faith in his ability to defeat the foe, we realized that something had to be done. One of my mates tried to circle him and stab him in the back. A valid and intelligent strategy in most cases. Not in this one, however. But it did give us some more time to think about a plan, as goblin throats are famously strong and crushing one takes a second. I and the boys were frantically trying to find something when my eyes stumbled upon a dead demon body. A body covered in strong magical chains. My second glance then went to the raised anchor dangling from the bow, next to the Stormcaller and in front of the demon. My mates quickly grasped what was going on, and we nodded in understanding. There was, however, a slight problem. We needed someone to grab the demon's attention, and no one wanted to volunteer. Loyalty is a funny thing, isn't it? A goblin loyalty is at least pragmatic, but sometimes even we get some urges some might call heroic. So I was standing there, few feet behind the demon. I donned the Stormcaller's hat, and as the events began unfolding, I shouted something like, "What ya thinking, ya big pansy? Ya daft scallywag won't even recognize even Stormcaller on this ship." This demon fella looked straight at me, and so I continued. You're getting a little wet from my rain, aren't ya? Come and get me if you have the guts. My plan was effective. Too effective, perhaps. I never thought that I could muster such charisma to outwit an otherworldly fiend. Now that I think about it, it was probably the hat. The demon started charging, almost before my boys were done tying the chains to his legs, spikes and whatnot, and I began dodging and running for my sorry life. As the fiend kept pursuing me, I shouted at my boys, "Drop the bloody anchor already!" And at that moment, the demon noticed the chains tied to him. I jest you not, it was fear I saw in the monster's eyes when I heard a loud splash of the anchor hitting water. "You fell for a classic blunder, mate," I say to the fiend second before he's dragged to the depths. The fight was nearly over after this, but I decided that my loyalty was spent for the day and dropped to the ground playing dead. We won in the end, and we finally gained some proper riches, gold, jewels and other valuable things. I got my share of plunder and I was satisfied with the loot, but that wasn't the end to it all. You see, I don't want to brag, but after the battle, I was approached by Stormcaller and the captain himself. I was commended for my brilliance and combat prowess, and I was made officer. Said they needed someone with quick feet and quicker mind, and I seemed like the right decision after almost single-handedly saving one of the most valuable officers. And as you all can see, being an officer has one very important advantage. I got to keep the Stormcaller's hat. Now bring me another round. My throat is sore and I need something before I tell about the time we found an old and forgotten dragon temple.
So that's all the story for now. If you like what we do, you can also find us on our website, link in the description, where we post all of our homebrew and other stuff, including collaborations with other various talented people. If you are feeling generous, you can also check out our Patreon, where we give various rewards for monthly subscriptions. To end this with, we would like to give an enormous thanks to all of our patrons. You guys are amazing. So that would truly be everything for now. Thank you all for watching, and we hope you'll be up for another round next time.